All right, my name is Tanner Gregory. I am Jesus Christ. It's April 21st, 2026. Today I'm going to try to give you proof that I'm Jesus Christ. Okay, so the commands of Moses for people to stone each other to death was a bargain with our primitive urges of violence that we would more readily adhere to a more structured form of government. Different kind of things like stone a prostitute, stone a homosexual, different kind of things like this. Jesus Christ's crucifixion was a means by which we were subdued in our willingness to continue proceeding with those violent commands. Because once we saw him go through it, then we couldn't stand to bring ourselves to go through with it anymore. Okay, so Jesus Christ put forward some commands on marriage. One of them was don't marry a divorced woman, different kind of things like this. Very strict commands and things like this. Okay, so what I'm saying is that those were a bargain with our primitive urges of sexual dominion that we would more readily adhere to a more limited form of government in exchange. I could say this is my sexual property, my wife or whatever, in exchange for all this kind of thing. Okay, so my crucifixion as a way to get you out of that was that they made me see these women getting raped by all these different people. They made me get obsessed with them and then see them getting raped and see them have sex with all these people. Even the shadows on the wall, I was seeing this woman having sex in the shadows on the wall all day long. It was the worst, one of the worst things I've ever been through in my entire life. All right, so what I'm saying is this. On April the 4th and April the 15th of 2020, I saw two separate women pregnant with my son from having had sex with different men. Okay, so the date falling directly in between these dates is December the 10th of 2020. But the way the math works out is they must have been taking into account something to do with periods, and a woman's period is once every month and different kind of things like this, because it's 9 months from November the 10th of 2020 is August the 10th of 2021. And what it says that the dragon was waiting to consume the child the moment he was born, who will rule over the world with an iron scepter and these types of things. Well, the dragon means necessary evil. That you have to read my book to understand that, but the dragon means necessary evil. And so what it's saying is that they don't want hereditary monarchy. They actually had me anoint my head with oil to be king at some point, but I'm not going to be the king like that. We came up with like a 500 to 700 page constitution. Government kind of stuff is really what I understand more than anything else in this world. So you can trust that we did a pretty good job. But basically what I'm trying to say is this, is that 1,260 days from August the 10th of 2021 is inauguration day. And so what it's talking about is now we're coming in, it's a countdown, right? So what are we having a countdown to? Okay, so what we're having a countdown to is the 42 months that it talks about. It says the Gentiles were allowed to march on the holy city for 42 months where they've been assigned to the outer court. Okay, and then it says there's the first beast who rules for 42 months. We are now in that 42-month period because the 1,260 days counted down to inauguration day. Now we're in the 42-month period. And so what happens over this next 42 months, as I understand it from reading this document and from everything that they've showed me and everything else, is that 42 months is the 42 months that the first beast rules, is the 42 months that the Gentiles were allowed to be here, but they're going to actually have to leave. And then the second beast makes miracles of fire come out of the sky. So understand that. The first beast rules for 42 months, and then all of a sudden here comes this next beast, and they're going to make miracles of fire come out of the sky. And what they explained to me was that they're going to use airstrikes to rid this country of minorities. Oh, and I don't think I got into that with you yet, but here's the deal. They intend to get everybody out of this country who isn't white, okay? And the reason why is because the white people evolved in like the Arctic regions where there is no sun. It is very dark all the time. It must have kept us up there. And that's what my theory is. But, you can imagine, you have a strong reliance on systems and everything like this when it's such a harsh environment and you're in the dark. There's polar bears up there. For sure. So, but anyways, all I'm trying to say is that's how you can understand. There's all other kinds of interesting things to tell you, about what does Revelation mean and different kind of things like this. Okay, but you can read that in my book for free at thelambstestimony.com. But what I'm saying is that once you have a basic understanding of what it is that I'm saying, just as simple as what does the dragon, the baby, the 1,260 days, where is it counting down to? Where is it going? That's how you know I'm who I am, because I even can tell you that. You know what I mean? But just because that's what I'm trying to say. That's how you can understand everything. You know what I mean? You're not going to be able to understand that I'm Jesus Christ unless I have a story like that lines up with something like that, and there's no way I could have made it up, you know. But for sure, a lot of crazy. They have a lot of crazy things in mind. Okay, like killing people. You know what I mean? In fact, there's another two prophecies that have to do with dropping nuclear weapons on California. One of them is the 5 months that Noah spent in his ark, and the 5 months of the scorpion sting in the book of Revelation correlate. Because the 5 months that the scorpions were seeing in the book of Revelation was the 5 months that I spent in jail in Wise County. And the scorpions, you know, it talks about breastplates of iron, you know, a gold, they have a gold rim around their hat, and they talk about, you know, so it's police officers. And so what it meant, what the government figured out, and this is really complicated, but this is going on. What the government finally figured out was that, oh, well, we're going to end up needing to use nuclear weapons on California. So what we have to do is like help, like, because the aliens were actually directing this stuff through, like, they were having me I was sending out emails and stuff, and then some of them were coded that was directing the government into, because the government wants to use nuclear weapons. And so they ended up framing this sex trafficking situation. And then basically it was like, oh, well, you know, that look where you're at, and look at this sex trafficking situation that's going on. And oh, by the way, yeah, it's all about using nuclear weapons. But there was there was a lot of crazy stuff that went on there. There was a double crucifixion because marriage is between two people, so you have to have two Jesus Christ, because there actually is a woman out there who they claim is kind of Jesus Christ. And so, but that situation was so messy, and they were dragging around, and they were staging situations in the room next to me and all this kind of stuff. They were dead serious about getting those nuclear. I hope you understand that. The government, there's people driving around in cars that like brand new BMWs. You know what I mean? Staging shit in the room next to me. For real. Yeah. And you could tell it was just a serious business person. And it was just it was crazy. For sure it wasn't just some random sex trafficker who was dragging her around. If it was, I mean, who even knows who was in there? Supposedly it was this woman, and this was our double crucifixion or something like this. But there's a lot of crazy shit that has to do with California. But I wanted to tell you, they wanted to blame it on Pizzagate too. You know what I mean? Because like Pizzagate, that's why we do the nuclear weapons, is because of Pizzagate, and they rape children. Here's what they even told me one time. They gotta rape the kids, or else how are they gonna make babies? Seriously, they said this shit to me. I was hearing this shit in my ear, and I couldn't make it go away. And I was hearing this shit all the time. But what they're doing is they're saying the craziest shit. They're talking about cut pizza, and they were driving me around to different pizza restaurants, and they were like, there's one over here that's green, and like give me the exact address, and like show me where they were. And like before I even got to the pizza place, then I was already understanding where I was going because of these things. And it was a lot of stuff, you know. Oh, they told me that they kill kids and they throw it in the pizza in some of these places, and then they feed it to people and stuff. But you know, but they really want, you know, to say, because of like the way they did it in Egypt, you know, it's like, oh, because of the slaves, then I'll do the 7 plagues. You know what I mean? But if they have something like even bigger than that, you know, then well, that's the reason why. But I don't know if you understand what's going on with Pizzagate or anything, but it's like they end up getting a hold of the Amber Alert system, and they got a hold of, I mean, it's so insane. Like, they're all connected. Like, they're all having pizza places right next to each other, and one of them runs the Amber Alert system, and one of them, you know, is literally over human trafficking. And it was like, Dude, once you start to figure out, and they were posting shit like and putting it on their billboard and showing it on their stuff and showing weird pictures online and weird pictures in their buildings. And finally, somebody just came in there and got crazy and just pulled out a gun and started shooting, and started just shooting and stuff because it was like a perverted, creepy place with pictures of like half naked kids on the fucking walls. It's only gonna be a matter of time. I probably would have done it. You know what I mean? But seriously, but all I'm trying to say is just that, you know, because of it's more crazier than you would believe. That even what you hear about Jeffrey Epstein is not even. Man, you don't even know anything. Oh, you want to see a good one? Watch Pizzagate Pedogate by Titus Frost. Seriously, on BitChute. If you're ready to take a deep dive, that thing had hundreds of thousands of views on YouTube at one point. There was one point on YouTube when you could just type in the word Pizzagate and it would literally pull up stuff like that. And then they got a hold of it and then they just took all of it off, because it's so sinister and it's so sick and it's so crazy what goes on in this fucking country that they don't want you to know about it. You know what I mean? That's literally what's going on. Like, oh yeah, rape the kids, tear them to pieces, get in charge of the Amber Alert system, and you know, let's get in charge of human trafficking, and you know, let's get in charge of highlights, you know, the book company. So I heard they even got in control of that, so they could see the kids before they even fucking figured out what's going on. Over with Jeffrey Epstein stuff, but you know, get in charge of all this stuff, and then, you know. And then just tell the parents when they get upset, just shut the fuck up. You ain't even allowed to understand what we're doing to your kids. Can we live in a country like that and not be a little bit pissed off? Please. Because I know I get mad sometimes and I'm like, I don't even think this is rational. But you know what? Honestly, because when I start talking about that, I feel like I'm getting irrational, honestly. That's why I just stopped myself right there, because I'm like, okay, I'm not going to sit here and think about what the fuck I'm just now thinking about as far as finding out what the fuck why is this not a bigger problem with other people? You know what I mean? And part of the reason why is because they did scrub a lot of the evidence off. This is how people were building their cases. This is how people were coming to conclusions, and you know, they may have to revisit that a couple times and try to make sure they got that in their head right. And you know, disrupting some of that and disrupting some of the fight in people, you know. But it really is just disgusting to even think about it. To think for even 1 second that they can go and do all that stuff and you put that shit on YouTube and they can take it off. What the fuck is that? YouTube was just a small business like, you know, 20 years ago or something. I mean, they literally was like just a handful of kids. I saw videos of them when they first started that business, and they were just like, just a few little nerds in a room, and they were just like, well, we got 20 videos, and one of them has 300 views, and this is literally the kind of conversations that they were having at that point, you know. But, I mean, what is it, you know? It's probably the fucking Federal Reserve people doing all of it. God damn, dude, what the hell is wrong with this fucking place? You know, I mean, seriously, do you even know, but you know why it's so bad? Yes, because of the Federal Reserve, but do you know why the Federal Reserve is even there? Because of the 17th Amendment. And nobody knows that. Nobody knows that. That's what's kind of actually scary, because we're going to need a hell of a lot more people to know that. And you know, to even have a chance at somebody saying, hey, let's fix that, you know? But basically the way it works is just because it decentralizes the government. And then the states are halfway running the show, you know, which pretty much, since both parties have to be on the same page, then they are pretty much running the show as well. So, you know, but the states, you know what I mean, over the federal government. To say something like, you know, just, we're going to shrink the federal government. And the states will always choose to do that. And so the states will always choose to have the federal government be smaller because that could be their money. And then at the same time, they will always choose for the federal government to do the correct thing most of the time, because why would it be doing anything incorrect when they could be doing it themselves? Do you see what I'm saying? I mean, literally, that makes no sense. You know what I mean? Even for a criminal, they wouldn't want it to. And it really kept the government going in a really good direction. I mean, the states had to contend with each other, had to compete with each other because they had freedom of movement all around the country. And so it's a very good system. And it kept the central banks from getting in charge for a very long period of time, 77 years prior to the Federal Reserve. And even prior to that, I mean, they had little 20-year charters, and they would never just give them an open-ended agreement because, you know, I mean, ultimately it was just an experiment that they wanted to see if they liked it or not, and they never did seem to like it. And then at the end, they just seemed like they didn't want to do it anymore. But it was a conspiracy by the central bankers, you know, for a long period of time they took. I actually wrote a book about it, and so that book hasn't been published yet, but it will explain everything in detail. I used artificial intelligence to write the whole fucking thing. It was so incredible what it came up with. I learned so much myself. But I mean, it's just proof positive 100% that they controlled magazines. And one of the biggest things that they did was they said that the federal Senate was corrupt because they weren't accountable to the people. And there was all different kinds of things like that were just, you know, in cartoons and everything else. I mean, for a very long periods of time. And so, you know, they had discovered well before humanity, you know, and even without AI, I don't know if I could have figured it out myself, because a lot of the stuff it found was just incredible in archives and different things like this. But, you know,